Hello and welcome to episode 11 of Knee Deep in the Pod. I'm Dan.
And I'm Chris. And this podcast is basically a place for us to talk about games and reminisce about the good old days when we actually had time to play them. This week, we're going to be talking about our favourite games.
But before we dive into that, Chris, what have you been playing this week?
I'm so glad you asked. You know, in the last episode, I ended up talking about boomer shooters again. And I was torn because I had a few different games on the go lately. I'm still slightly torn about what I'm about to say. But I'm going to go with this one. My sister introduced me to a game. In fact, she bought it for me for Christmas. And then the other day I organised to play it with her watching me at the same time. And she kind of, we'd hang out whilst I played.
Yeah.
And it was quite different to any game I've played recently. It is called Puzzle Agent.
Now that doesn't sound like a boomer shooter.
It is no boomer shooter, I can assure you.
Puzzle Agent.
Yeah, I mean, the clue's in the name. It's a puzzle game, okay? But it's kind of witty and it's silly and it has a narrative and story going through it. It's animated in this sort of cartoon style that's not a million miles away from The Simpsons. It feels kind of like that in the way it looks.
Yeah.
And there's just comedy throughout. And the premise is you are an FBI agent in some obscure department, the department for difficult puzzles. I forget what it is, but it's the puzzle department. And so when you first see this guy, the intro is him in this office, and it's just him, and his office has just got crossword puzzles on the wall, and games and silly puzzles that just I don't know, Rubik's Cube on the desk, that sort of thing. And that's his whole job. And he gets approached to be hey, you need to go out on the field to sort out this mystery. And he's like, what? Out there? In the field? and and you go out and see this you sort of visit this obscure village because some factory has had an accident which supplies all the erasers for the White House. Apparently.
Okay.
It's really important we fix this because think of all the erasers that aren't going to the White House right now. Anyway, you just go down this silly story, and basically you keep having these puzzles you have to solve, and it's a whole mix of rotating tiles to make the picture work, to you're trying to get somewhere on a snowmobile and you need to rebound, you plan your route properly by putting, I don't know, logs, these angled logs that then bounce your guy at a right angle to go the other way down the the snow track, and then you do another one, and maybe the next level of that puzzle is you've got to get from A to B, but you need to pick up all the broken gears for this thing you're trying to fix, or stuff like that. There are too many different puzzles in the game to kind of describe and do justice, but it's just a really just fun, silly puzzle game, and some genuinely challenging puzzles. And I'll end with this to kind of continue with the lightheartedness of it. For every puzzle, you can request where you spend a currency to get clues.
Okay.
And you can get up to 3 clues, and there's sort of different, the clues get more helpful as you go. And you the currency is chewing gum, and because the kind of reasoning is I always think better when I'm chewing on something, and so every screen you're looking around for half used discarded chewing gum on the floor or on the railings or on the ceiling, and you click it to add it to your collection, and you can spend
that's
puzzles.
quite fun.
Yeah So there you go.
Have you seen Ludwig on BBC?
Ludwig? No.
Because you've basically just described the plot of Ludwig, but turned into a video game. Yeah, right. It's about a puzzle designer who has to, for some reason, go undercover as a police officer and go to all these crime scenes. But he's treating the crime scenes like they're puzzles.
Right. Oh, yeah. Fun. Well, there you go. There's a refreshing change for our listeners.
That sounds fun. It sounds probably like I'd enjoy it.
Yeah, I think you would. And it's like, it's one of those games where it's like, it's nice and compact. Like, I couldn't tell you exactly how long, but I don't know, 6 hours? Like, it's not a long game.
Yeah.
You know, a few evenings and you'll be done. Really, really nice. I should say, actually, there's also a Puzzle Agent 2. Puzzle Agent 1, like, does not finish the story. Like, it kind of ends on an obvious kind of bit of a cliffhanger, or kind of, at least, like, the story's not finished sort of moment. So I'll be diving into Puzzle Agent 2 sometime soon.
It left you dangling.
Yeah. Like a puzzle piece on a thread. So, Dan, what have you been playing lately?
Well, Chris, I haven't been playing it a lot. Well, I've been playing a bunch of games on VR still. The one that I wanted to talk about today, because we obviously can't go more than 10 minutes without mentioning this game, is I played Doom in VR, like the original Doom on VR.
Oh, Doom, is it?
Yeah.
What a refreshing change. Tell me all about it.
One of these days, we'll have to try and go one episode without mentioning Doom.
I honestly, like, we'll come to this in a bit, but for my list, I was like, I have to just not include Doom, because it's like, I was like, what game should I not include in my list? Anyway, carry on. Tell me about it.
I didn't even think about that. I might need to add that to my list. So anyway, this is basically, you know how people port Doom to everything under the sun?
Yeah.
So someone's made a native Android port of Doom, which runs directly on the Quest headset.
Nice.
And so I played through episode 1 in its entirety.
Yeah, you did.
Come on. Hurt Me Plenty.
Yeah.
Which ended up being pretty easy, but I was a bit too scared to play in ultra-violence.
Man. I would be I mean, you know what I'm like. I'm terrified of the demons. Like, even like in the normal PC setting, like if it was VR, I would lose it.
It can be a scary game. I did get a few jump scares, but I was more worried about, like, is this going to be mechanically difficult? You know, am I going to be able to get through the game on ultra-violence while playing in VR? And it turned out to be quite easy on Hurt Me Plenty. But I honestly don't know if Doom lends itself that well to VR.
Okay.
There are a lot of games I think do it really well. Given the choice, I would play Doom on a PC every time.
Okay.
Yeah, because it's such a fast-paced game. And in VR, like, if you go too fast, obviously that could give you a bit of motion sickness. But me, being a bit naive, like, I went into the settings and they have a slider. Basically, you can set your run speed for comfort.
Right.
And I was like, well, this is Doom. Like, I need to run fast. So I just cranked that baby all the way up. And I was running around, shooting these demons. And then afterwards, like, by the time I got to about level 6, I was like, oh, I want this to be over. But I was like, I have to finish the episode. So I just plowed on through. And by the end, I was like, I was feeling rough.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
And how involved did you get as like a VR player? Like, was it just that the headset is the screen and you're kind of, you know, the controllers are like, it's almost like you were playing like a console game, but the screen is on your face? Or was there more, you know, were you kind of more active?
So you're holding a gun.
Okay.
Your right hand is holding a gun. So you have to point at the enemies to shoot them.
Mm-hmm.
The left hand is just basically a controller. You just use that as a joystick. Oh yeah, I was going to say, you know, last week we talked about billboard sprites, or like how sometimes in a 3D game you'll get 2D objects, like, and Doom uses that extensively. Obviously, all the enemies are 2D objects within a 3D world. Yeah. And that becomes extremely apparent when you're playing in VR. Everything, all the enemies look like they're made of paper, and it's a little bit weird. But it was fun. It was an experience. I think it's worth a try. I probably won't do it again, but it was fun.
Oh, cool. Yeah. Well, as soon as you said it, I was very curious. I'll be interested to try it out. But I will, I'll set my expectations to perhaps it's maybe a one and done experience.
Yeah, definitely give it a try. I installed a mod to give me like a voxel gun, because obviously if you can point the gun anywhere, it doesn't really make sense for it to be a 2D sprite. Right. So this mod turns the gun into a 3D model. Okay. And I think it might be worth getting like a mod to do the enemies as well, because you can get mods which make sort of voxel-based 3D enemies that look true to vanilla, but they're actually fully 3D.
Oh, nice. For the less technical people, including myself, what is voxel? What's voxel?
I can't remember what it stands for, but it's basically a 3D pixel.
Okay.
And more broadly, it's used to describe like when something's made of cubes. Like Minecraft is a voxel-based world.
Okay.
So if you imagine like a Doom enemy sprite, like a demon, is obviously a 2D image made of pixels. If you get a mod that turns it into voxels, someone will have like made a 3D representation that's kind of true to the original 2D image. Mm-hmm. So it's still pixelated, but each pixel is now in 3D.
Okay.
If that makes sense. And then they've kind of obviously had to add more details to create the shape.
Yeah.
But they've tried to stay true to the original like artwork.
Oh, cool. Nice. All right. Well, should we get into the subject proper?
Let's do it. This is going to be a fun one for us, I think. Probably worth mentioning to our listeners that this is all just going to be extremely subjective. It's just our favourite games. That's what it is.
That's it. Yeah, little insight into us. Of course, we talk about some of our favourite games already, but these are like top of the pile. So this is, Hall of Fame, Dan and Chris's favourite games. And that's it, really. That's the, like, sit down, get comfortable. Before we start naming names, I have to say, I'm actually a little bit surprised with my list.
Really?
I think there's a few ways I could have approached this, for sure. I think it's definitely a theme in my list is like replayability. So like these are all games that I've come back to lots of times. But as we've said before, there are some games that are genuinely really great, and I would quote them and recommend them as like excellent games and ones that I've really enjoyed. Would I call them my favourite games? I'm not sure, but they might deserve a spot at the table. But, like games like Portal, for example, I've not replayed Portal or Portal 2. I did play the multiplayer of Portal 2 for the first time recently with my wife, which was great. But those are excellent games. Maybe they deserve a place in the list, but they didn't make it. And then there's another game here which I've put there. I do really like the game. I think it does deserve to be there. But it was like I didn't expect it to be there, and I was like, the amount of times I've replayed it and come back to it, and I was like, it has to be there. It can't not be there. So that kind of surprised me. Were there any? What about you? Did you have like an interest, like a certain angle you came at this with? Did anything surprise you?
Yeah, I think it is probably worth talking about exactly what we mean by our favourite games, because that favourite can mean a lot of different things, To some people, that would be a game you keep coming back to. To someone else, it might be like a game that they hold in very high regard. So when I think of my favourite games, I tend to think of it as what games do I feel the most fondness towards when I think about them? Mm-hmm. And it's really hard because that can fluctuate. And as I was saying to you just before we started recording, I find that there's a bit of a recency bias sometimes. If I've played a game and really enjoyed it, then the temptation is to add that to my list of like, oh yeah, this is one of my favorite games ever.
Yeah.
But then fast forward 6 months. Is it?
Yeah.
I don't know. It's really hard because there's some games, I think maybe nostalgia is a part of it. There's some games, particularly ones I played, when I was quite a lot younger, that would just hold a special place in my heart. And even if I don't necessarily play them that much anymore, I still feel like they deserve a slot.
Yeah. I honestly, just before we started, I was like thumbing through CDs of games from like early childhood, man. I was just, each one I look at and just get like a flood of like, oh my goodness,
Yeah.
I was like, but does this deserve to be there? Oh, I don't know. Yeah. So these are our favorite games, kind of, but don't hold us to it either, because it might change tomorrow.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
And Chris, you thought it would be a good idea to try and guess each other's.
Yeah. Is that, should we just do that now?
Yeah, okay. Should we go like, I'll guess one of yours, you guess one of mine, sort of thing?
Yeah.
And then maybe, do you want to like talk about each one as it comes up?
Let's take it in turns. And for now, I think if one of us like gets it right, then just launch into it. Tell us why you love it.
Just launch. I like it.
Yeah.
Okay. So I haven't had a lot of time to think about this, but I think surely this has got to be up there for you. Diablo 2?
Oh, I have not included Diablo 2 in my shortlist. Okay. So for the listeners, in like for full transparency, I have like my shortlist, my shortlist, and then I've got my long list. Diablo 2 did make it to my long list, but I think for the purposes of this game, I'm going to be looking at the kind of short, and maybe the short.
How many are on your short list?
My short list, I got 7.
Okay, so I'll limit mine as well to the top 7.
Okay, nice. Okay.
Do you want to have a guess?
Yeah, Morrowind.
Yeah, that's number 1, man.
Nice.
And it wasn't when I looked at the list earlier today.
Oh.
But I looked at my list and I was like, nah, Morrowind's got to be number 1.
That's interesting. I mean, like, I'm kind of not surprised, but I am. I'm like, I knew it had to be there. It couldn't not be there. But it's interesting. I haven't actually like numbered mine in like, I haven't got a top 1. I've just got these are the 7. But
okay,
that you just said that it's like the top as well. Kind of like, I know you love that game, but also I don't like necessarily hear you. I don't know, like, or like see you playing it all the time or talking about it. So like, I don't know. It's a big claim. Number 1. Tell me about it.
I know, it's weird. It's not a game I play loads, but I do have a playthrough actually with a few friends. Some of my school friends were like playing through every now and again on a multiplayer version. But I just love the world. Just something about it. It's a very unique place, and I think it's almost like when I think about Morrowind, it's almost like thinking about somewhere I used to go on holiday.
Yeah.
It's that level of like, oh yeah, I love being there because it's such an immersive world, and I used to just spend hours just exploring the world. And the gameplay is really fun as well, but I have played it to death, honestly.
I get it though. It is just, I mean, as we've discussed before, I've not played Morrowind nearly as much as, say, Oblivion, for example. But I have played it several times. I do enjoy it. But as you said, I think that's like the Elder Scroll games in general just are a nice place to be. It's just it's just really pleasant. It's really nice and pretty, and there are dark and dangerous bits as well, of course. But I mean, I definitely like to the soundtracks episode. Like, it is one of the soundtracks I come back to again and again. It's just really good, and it's just nice. So yeah, fair play.
Okay, let me try again. And this is another one we talk about a lot. So I'm hoping this is on your shortlist. Knights and Merchants.
I couldn't not include Knights and Merchants. Yes. Come on. I should say, actually, so like another, as I kind of hinted at earlier, I had a bit of a slant when I was doing this of like, should I try and not include some of the ones I just talk about all the time, just to kind of get a bit of variety? So like, if there's if there's one there, you know, that not there that perhaps you're like, surely, then maybe that's at play. But no, Knights and Merchants, of course it's there. Like, I actually, it was a candidate for like, I should probably not include this because we talk about it like most episodes. And that was
it's one of those games that we talk about a lot and probably none of our listeners have ever played.
No one. Yeah, so I mean, obviously, we played it loads as kids, and then we came back to it, and, you know, I don't know, in our late teens, and, you know, we were doing multiplayer matches, and you know, the remake happened. And since then, I mean, one of my great joys actually is introducing new players to this game from 1999. You know,
98, isn't it?
Is it 90? It might be 98. I think you're right. And them finding the same joys and like same, like, you know, like finding the things that we love about it. And I love that. And just watching them get good, and it never gets dull to me. Just like every town you build is like a new little adventure and project, and it's different every time, and there's different challenges every time, and you never quite build the perfect town, and you're like, oh, next time, you know.
Next time.
And it's so satisfying, but when you do it well, it's so satisfying, and it's so frustrating when you get it wrong, because you care so much, you know, you care so much about it. And I guess partly, you know, it's probably like cuts both ways, but probably part of the reason you care about it so much is it's not a quick fix. Nothing's quite, you know, it's not easily, if you've got it wrong, like it's going to take a while to get it, you know, to fix it. And so many decisions in that game really matter. Maybe I think that's part of it as well. Just like, you know, you can't just like do whatever and it'll be fine, and, you know, not make much difference to the next time. It's like, you know, every decision you make, where you place that building, how you plan your roads, how, like, what units you're planning to, you know, you make, because you make those decisions earlier on in your production lines and stuff, and it's like, it's that
micromanagement you were talking about last time.
It is. And you know, just everything matters, and like every little bit, and you have to be on top of it. And I love it. Even though some of it's like infuriating. So like, I think some of our listeners who haven't played the game. So we've probably talked about it enough, if you've listened to other episodes, that you've got an idea, but it's a real-time strategy game, very obscure, from the late 90s. Very heavy on town building and planning, but there is also combat as well. And it's just it's like this funny mix of like town management, combat, and like almost like people watching. And like, you know, I think I described it before as almost like watching an ant colony. Like everyone's got their jobs, and you're kind of watching them all run about and do their things. It's just, it's so great. It's so charming, and I think, you know, something we've talked about before, like the art style is a bit, to me at least, is a bit timeless, or it's, you know, it has retained a certain charm. I mean, this isn't a great comparison. I was going to say, like, you know, a bit like Mario. It's nothing like Mario, but like, you know, like classic Mario is like very much of a time, and, you know, you look at it and you see like, gaming from the 80s or early 90s, but it's distinct and it communicates what it is, you know, in a certain style, in a certain way, very effectively. And I think Knights and Merchants does that well, in a kind of charming way.
You're right that it can be infuriating, because very often, right, we'll have a game and the game might finish at like 10:30, like, so they're quite long.
Yeah.
And I'll go through to the bedroom, and basically, like, my wife will know if I won or lost based on, like, am I in a great mood or am I in a terrible mood?
Yeah. Just by your demeanor, like, oh no, it's been a bad one.
Yeah. But it's because, like you say, you do really care about the town. You spend, you know, an hour and a half building your town, only for someone to come and stomp all over it in about 5 minutes.
Yeah, completely. Oh, it couldn't not take a spot in my shortlist. So yeah, Hall of Fame, Knights and Merchants for sure. Okay, well, I'm going to cheat a little bit here, although I think I would have come up with it anyway. But I mean, there is a picture of it literally in the background of this as I'm speaking to you now.
Oh, so there is.
Is Hollow Knight part of your shortlist?
Hollow Knight is number 2 on my shortlist. Yeah, so you're doing very well. Hollow Knight. This was the one it was actually number 1 when I looked at my list today. Because I do think it's an exceptional game, but I haven't revisited it since playing it.
Yeah.
And I've thought about it a few times, but I just haven't really felt compelled to replay it.
Mm.
And actually, although I really enjoyed the game and I think it's a masterpiece, I did also find it frustrating at times.
Oh yeah.
And when I think back on it, I still remember like those frustrations.
Yeah.
And so, although it's great, I can't put it number 1.
Yeah. So for very brief context, for listeners, this is a sort of 2D platformer, Metroidvania style game.
Yeah.
And is kind of the indie game darling, I suppose, of recent times. It's hugely successful in that space from a small team. And Silksong, the incoming sequel, is like the most hotly like followed sequel, and like the press are always running stories about like, oh, is Silksong delayed and when's it going to come out, and it's just all the time.
Team Cherry, who made the games, made Hollow Knight, like they're very, very secretive about it.
Right.
So the fans just go crazy. Every time there's like even a hint of some kind of Silksong news, the whole internet just kind of goes on fire.
Yeah.
But it's been in development for so long now that a lot of people are starting to get frustrated.
Yeah. Well, I share your feelings about Hollow Knight. I had a great time. I would recommend it to people for sure, and I think it's an excellent game. But it's also the frustrations. Like, it's one of those games when I found myself having to like rationalize in my head, like it's okay to ask for help. It's like it's okay to reach out to a friend and them to help you. Like, if that's what it takes to like have fun in the game, like that's fine.
Yeah.
And it was kind of a nice experience as well. You could get to chat to you and other friends about the game, and that's all cool. But yeah, that does kind of. We've talked about it before. I think I've even said on this very podcast that it's a badly designed game in some regards.
I think it's very hard to get started, especially if you're not used to those kinds of games, because you just don't know what you're doing. You don't know where to go. And after a while, you start to get the hang of it. But even then, like, what I found most frustrating was actually the combat and some of the boss fights, because I don't really enjoy boss fights particularly.
Okay.
And Hollow Knight has like hundreds of them, and they're
all
really hard. And if you die, it can be quite unforgiving, because you have to do like a corpse run essentially to recover your money, and if you fail, then it's gone forever.
Yeah.
And so there were some bosses where I must have attempted them like dozens of times before finally beating them. And it's great, it's super satisfying when you get there, but there were times when I just wanted to throw my controller across the room,
Yeah. Oh,
some people love it. Some people love like a really tight boss fight, or like that kind of combat where it's all about reflexes and perfect timing.
Yeah.
I don't really like that. I just like to be able to spam a button and, and it just works.
Yeah, I get that. And I think I like, often quite like a halfway house as well. Like I like it to be sort of skillful enough that I feel pretty cool doing it, but it's not super duper hard either.
Yeah, exactly.
But then your brother, I think he loves that stuff. Like,
Yeah.
He's gone out, because there are so many optional and extra, bosses and extra bits on that game. And I think he's gone and done like pretty much most of it.
Yeah.
And I think also, I know he's quite into Cuphead, which I think is like
really?
intentionally like a very difficult sort of platformer boss oriented game.
Yeah, that's a popular one, but it's one that I just don't think I'll enjoy for that reason.
Okay. You want to hit me with your next guess?
Yeah. There are so many games I could choose. It's hard to know exactly which one to pick, but simply because you talk about it a lot, I'm going to say Heroes 3.
Heroes 3 is in the list, my friend.
Yes.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes.
When was the last time you actually played it, though?
Oh. I would say within the last couple of years.
Okay, that's not bad, actually.
Yeah, I do revisit it, a reasonable amount. But I guess again, like Knights Emergence, like it's quite long.
Yeah.
I mean, each game, to be honest, is can be much longer, possibly. It's particularly if you do multiplayer. So yeah. So this is a turn-based strategy game. I actually watched a video about it the other day. There's a great YouTube channel called NoClip, who do these like video game documentaries, and then they've got a few like sister channels now. And like on one of the sister channels, they did a like Heroes of Might and Magic 3 is the best game ever or something. And basically it's one of like the NoClip staff making a case for it and showing it to his boss.
Okay.
And so it was kind of a shorter video, but it was like him showing him. And he was like trying to explain, like show the game and explain it. And it was kind of blowing this guy's, like the boss's mind. He was like, I've not quite seen anything quite like this. Like this is wild, but like really cool. And like there's so many cool things to like take in. I guess I take so much of it for granted now, but I think one of the joys of Heroes 3, so there's all these different towns and all these different creatures, and there's just, to be honest, like in the kind of shortest soundbite I can come up with, I think one of the absolute joys of Heroes 3 is its complexity. I think that's the thing. Like, it's quite easy to just get up and go. Like the concept of the game is not too difficult to get your head around, and so like but there's so much, like there's so many creatures. And there's so many like different abilities and like things that change how combat works with those creatures. And then there's the magic schools. And then there's all the different skills that your heroes can learn. Mm-hmm. And there's how those skills, and also like as your heroes level up, how that impacts combat and your creature's abilities. And there's like so many, like there are things I was learning about that game, only in the last few years that I didn't know, Yeah. I mean, this is one trivial example, and this might blow some people's minds, but so like you have these heroes that kind of, your creatures are kind of bound to heroes. You can't move your armies around without these heroes. It's kind of all about them, and they lead an army essentially. And your hero's speed across the map is dictated by the slowest creature in his army.
Oh, I never knew that.
Right. So if you want to go faster, if you just want someone to get from A to B really quick, you just like give them a few of the quickest units that you've got and ditch the rest, put them somewhere else, and then he or she will travel much faster across the map.
No way.
Yeah. And there's all these little strategies that I kind of, as my younger self never even considered as well, about like how you do combat. And anyway, we could go down the rabbit hole, and I better not. But I think I talked about in the last episode. Just I love fantasy and all that stuff. So like, there's so much like fantasy and like mythical type creatures and all that stuff in it, which is just like a. Can I say this word? Smorgasbord. Is that how to say it? Schmorg? Do you kind of go schma?
Can we say that?
It is a smorgasbord. Well, I'm attempting to say it, of creatures and mythical goodness.
Yeah.
As well as being this kind of, quite serious strategy game.
And it is quite unique, isn't it? I can't think of many other games like it, like nowadays.
No, so I can't think of many games like it. When I went looking a while ago for like games that were sort of turn-based strategy, I was like, I had a bit of an itch. I was like, I kind of want a game that's a bit like Heroes, but not Heroes, and like what else is in that genre that's like really good? And the only thing I could come up with is a game called XCOM. I've not played XCOM. In some ways, it's no way like nothing like Heroes, but it has this same element of like turn-based. Like you take a turn, you kind of tell all your creatures, or in XCOM, it's like you tell all your military dudes that you're controlling like what they're going to do next, and then you kind of watch it play out, and then you see the enemy do the same thing, and But anyway, basically, I couldn't find much that was like it at all. The only thing I can say is I think I've got the right cookies against me now. So the amount of like mobile games and that sort of thing that are like basically copies of Heroes, like they've got the aesthetic and they're kind of Heroes in everything but name. But they're kind of mostly they're watered down versions of Heroes that are trying to like rob your wallet, basically.
Yeah.
But yeah, it is kind of unique. And I don't want to take up too much time because there are other games we need to talk about, but I will just wrap up this little segment by saying, and I am also very excited for the future because after quite a hiatus, a new Heroes of Might and Magic game is on the horizon. It is being developed now. It's called Heroes of Might and Magic Olden Era, and they're releasing footage about it and showing different towns off and creatures and stuff. And I'm optimistic and hopeful for the new Heroes game.
Yeah, it looks really good. Going back to XCOM briefly, I haven't played it myself, but am I right in thinking that is what you might call a tactics game?
Possibly. I'm not an expert, so I wouldn't like to weigh in too heavily.
Okay. Because if I'm right about that, it's not a genre that I really have any affinity towards whatsoever, but I wouldn't say it's very much like Heroes.
No.
Because in a tactics game, you're like giving orders to your units or whatever. But that's just like the combat element, whereas in Heroes, the combat is a comparatively small part of the game, right?
A small portion, yeah. I actually I talked about this at length with your brother the other day, actually, and he was kind of saying because there have been lots of Heroes games for listeners that don't know. So Heroes of Might and Magic 3 is kind of the one most beloved by the community, though other ones have their following. But what your brother was saying is like a good Heroes of Might and Magic game, you should spend about 80% of your time on the adventure map.
Yeah.
So there's like the adventure map, there's like your towns, which you spend a little bit of time in, and then there's combat. And yeah, like as you say, like combat is like not it is an obvious part of the game, but it's not like you don't spend the majority of your time doing combat.
You can automate the combat. It basically it wouldn't be hard to tell a program to just play it for you, whereas the adventure map is where all the real decision making happens.
Yeah, that's kind of the big stuff. I mean, actually, certainly in Heroes 5, you can actually press a button that's just like, make the computer auto combat. Just make the computer do like auto resolve this combat, which can like in the early parts of the game when there's just like little like neutral enemies to deal with. It can just be a quick way of sorting it. But it's interesting, for Heroes 5, I think that's a bit of a sign of a problem with the game. And actually, there's too much. You spend too much time doing combat in Heroes 5, and I think it is of the games in the genre, I think it's in the top 2 or 3. Like it's a good Heroes game, but you spend too much time fighting, and too much of that fighting in the early days just becomes tedious. And so you have these options to like basically auto complete this fight, just like don't make me have to bother with it.
It's a bit like, reminds me of when we had that chat about roguelikes, and you were saying isn't it kind of symptomatic of a problem with the game when one of the core features is just being able to skip like huge sections of the game?
Yeah. It's like, I don't have to play as much of this anymore. Great. Like, something wrong here.
Anyway, we better whiz through these, otherwise
we're going to run out of time
all day.
Right. I'm at the point where I'm going to start thinking pretty hard. But before I do, I think I'm just going to say this out loud and say Donkey Kong.
Ooh, that's not on there, but I'm going to add that right now as an honorable mention.
Okay.
Donkey Kong Country. Yeah, because that is a great fun game. We talk about it a lot, obviously.
Yeah.
But it's not on my list.
Okay. Will you allow me a second guess?
Go on then.
I'm torn between Super Mario World and Super Mario Maker. So I'm just going to say them both.
They're also going on as honorable mentions.
Oh, okay. Wow. 0 for 3. So tell me, give me one from your list.
You're going to kick yourself with this one. Minecraft.
Ah, yeah. Yeah.
That's number 3 on my list. I honestly think that Minecraft is one of the greatest games ever made.
Wow.
I really do think that, just because it has near unlimited replayability. You know, I can come back to that game time and time again and still have a blast. Especially playing multiplayer. Like single player, sure, you can get bored of that, but multiplayer, like when you're playing with your friends, there's just always more that you can do. Like, it's just always fun.
Yeah. Nice. Yeah. You know, it's I've enjoyed playing it from time to time. I think most of my experience has been single player. Maybe that's where I'm going wrong.
Yeah, it's definitely not the same.
No, I've done like little worlds where I've played a bit with my wife, and like I've done, having like a shared server with a small group of people. I've had some good times, but I think I often feel like when I play with other people, usually they're lots better than me, and so they've got like loads of great stuff, and I'm like struggling. But anyway, no, the world would agree with you. Like, it's one of the most successful games ever.
I think it might be the best-selling game of all time.
Yeah.
Which makes sense. And one thing I love about it is it kind of appeals to everyone. Mm-hmm. Like, it appeals to such a wide demographic. You know, I play it and I'm in my 30s, and then my niece plays it and she's like 8 or 9.
Yeah.
It's such a cross-generational game that just anyone can get on board with. Yeah,
100%. As you say, like, there are kids like even like 5 or 6, playing that game, and people our age and older. It's got that, like, it's an oversimplification, but it's got that Lego appeal of just like,
for sure,
creativity and just, build stuff, do whatever you want. But also, it's got like, the survival element and the combat and, different goals you can, like the whole, like the nether in the end and all that stuff. I think one of the things that like continues to frustrate me about it, there's just so much to learn and there's not much help. You have like, a lot of it. I think there's more in-game help now than there used to be, but like certainly early days, it was like you always had to like trawl on the internet to like, how do I make one of these things? Or like, how do I find the nether? And
yeah, there is a lot to learn. That is definitely a problem. But it really depends what you're into, because if you play adventure maps, for example, there must be thousands of adventure maps out there that you could play, and they don't require any like prior knowledge at all, because everything's like handcrafted and it's made very deliberately for for anyone to like just hop in and enjoy.
Yeah, that's the other thing. And is that like you would download like a pack or a mod or something, and then it's like, here's your adventure map.
You can just download a world and play it. There's so many ways to play and enjoy the game. It's really more so today than ever. It's you can kind of think of it as a game engine as much as it is a game.
I was going to say there's Minecraft and like the kind of things that you would do like traditionally in Minecraft, but then you can download things that are like the amount of games that are just within Minecraft, like, you know,
exactly,
mods that are just like, oh, and you can like, here's a game I made in Minecraft. Here's this thing this cool thing you can do to Minecraft.
To sort of prove this concept, I made like a basic snake game in Minecraft last year.
Yeah,
it's like a multiplayer snake game. It's not great, you know. I'm sure I could make something better in a real game engine, but it is nonetheless like a fully functioning mini game made in Minecraft.
Nice. Shout out to the Quilby YouTube channel where you can find that video right now.
Thank you very much.
Nice. Okay.
I suppose it's my turn again.
It's your turn.
Okay, let me just think for a minute. Oh, Halo?
Halo. It was one of those, I was just like, well, it can't not be in the list. Because there are so many of them and I've played them all. So 1 through 5, there's also one called Reach, and then there's Halo, there's kind of 2 Halo 3s. There's Halo 3 and Halo 3 ODST, which is its own game. Like, I don't know if the branding on that is very good because it's a bit confusing. But anyway.
What does ODST stand for?
Orbital Drop Shock Trooper. Or Shock Troopers. I think, yeah. It's it's kind of, I think the idea of that one is like during the same time, like whilst the events of Halo 3 are happening, these events are also happening. And you're kind of following these soldiers that are a bit, they're still special, but they're not Master Chief. They're a bit more normal.
Okay.
So I think it's supposed to be a bit more kind of real and grounded. But to be honest, it's just it ends up being a bit of a slower paced game. But anyway, a big part of why this is on the list, I think, is I've replayed particularly Halo 1 actually, but I've replayed the Halo games many times, and quite a lot of those times with my wife doing like couch co-op on console. And just, it's amazing how, like, unlike some games that might kind of reveal, they're more interesting and like more advanced enemies or whatever, like later on in the game to keep things fresh.
Yeah.
With a Halo game, pretty much you've seen most of the enemies quite early on into the game. And it's really just more of the same. It's more, they're different. It puts those enemies in different scenarios, and all this, you're obviously following a bit of the story, but it's like the gameplay is it's quite similar throughout, but it's just endlessly gratifying. It's just always good. It just always feels good. You feel like an absolute boss as Master Chief, and the enemies feel great. I think one of the things that made that game stand out, the first one when it came out, was like the AI and how like it was a bit of a benchmark for how AI could react and like make tactical decisions and feel quite kind of real and responsive to a player. So it does that really well. And I think just like its character design is really good. Like every enemy is kind of quite distinct and has its own it has its own like very clear silhouette, and like you can, from a mile off, you can be like, oh, that's one of those, that's an elite, that's a hunter, or whatever it is. So I think each enemy has its own like really clear identity and what it does, but just the characters of like Master Chief and Cortana and like the Covenant, and it's just really good. And I think I've mentioned this before. One thing I love about it also from a story point of view, I love stories when there are like, it gets quite complex with different factions that have different, intentions and different goals. And particularly, I love watching a bit of infighting. That I'm always like, I love that in games. And so, first it's just you and the Covenant, so it's like you and these aliens basically, and then later on these guys called the Flood come along, and they're like they're kind of the real big bad guys in a sense, and they end up fighting the Covenant and you, and at different times, like later on in the game, you almost like make a temporary alliance with the Flood, which is crazy. So it's just like, whoa. I don't know, yeah, it's this kind of and like the soundtrack just makes it feel very epic all the time. Like everything that you're doing feels really important, I think, as partly because of how the game makes you feel. So yeah, I mean, part of the mainstream AAA gamer in me, this is the shout out to the AAA gaming space in my list for sure.
And there's nothing wrong with that. I just think the whole Halo franchise passed me by because I never had an Xbox.
Yeah, it's I actually played the first game on PC, and then the subsequent games didn't come out on PC.
Okay.
But the first game, I replayed that so many times, and then maybe I wouldn't have cottoned on to the rest so much. But some friends of mine at school, they had Xboxes, and they had these like parties or like these kind of sessions after school where like someone would bring their Xbox over to someone else's house who also has an Xbox, and we'd link them, and then we'd have like 8-player games running on like 2 TVs and stuff, which was like wicked. And
that sounds great.
Yeah, those are really cool times. And I was definitely like the noob, like who like turned up late to these sessions, but it was great fun. And then just playing like all these games through with my wife has been really great fun. So the Halo franchise.
Nice. Your turn.
My turn. I
don't think you'll get the next two, actually. You've got the top 3. I don't know if we'll get through 7.
No. I mean, I was going to say I was going to cheat a bit and say Diablo 2 for you, but what you've just said to me makes me feel like it's not going to be there.
No, I don't think you'll get these. Do you want to have one more guess? I'll give you a hint.
Give me a clue, yeah.
Next on my list is a game I played last year. I think it was the best game I played all year.
Oh my goodness. Pass. I think I'm going to kick myself when you say it, but...
Tunic.
Yes.
Yeah, so... How do I describe Tunic? It's kind of an ARPG and kind of a puzzle game in equal measure, I'd say.
Okay.
So you're running around in this sort of isometric view, and you're this little cute low poly fox, and it's a very pretty game, and it's got a great soundtrack, and the moment to moment gameplay is very fun. Like the combat it requires a lot of skill, but it's not overly difficult, I'd say. You just have a few moves, like you can do a sort of dodge roll and you can slash, fairly like standard stuff.
Yeah.
But it's done really, really well. But then you have the puzzle elements, which are where the game really shines, I think.
Okay.
And I don't want to like spoil anything, so I won't give too much away. But I think, as we've touched on before, like as you progress through the game, you're collecting these manual pages, and you're basically assembling the game's manual, which you can view at any time in the menu.
Uh-huh.
And the manual will like give you hints on certain game mechanics which might not otherwise be obvious. The manual will like give you hints on where to go, and eventually you can you start to understand like the bigger picture of what this game has to offer.
Okay.
And this all culminates in like the best puzzle I've ever experienced in a game.
Wow.
It was this crazy, mind-blowing moment which I will never forget.
Wow. Big sell.
There you go. That's number 4.
Love that. I'm super keen to play it, actually. And I think that's quite a big achievement for a game that you only played last year to make it to the top list.
Absolutely. Yeah. because all these other ones are sort of like old nostalgic favorites, you know.
Yeah,
except Hollow Knight, that was a fairly recent one.
Yeah. Okay. Would you like a clue?
Yeah, go on, give me a clue.
Okay, so I think for this one, in particular, think PlayStation 1.
Oh, okay. It's not Spyro.
No, not Spyro.
No, I didn't think so. Because, you know, we love Spyro, but I don't think it would be in your top 7. Oh, Crash Bandicoot might, though.
I'll give you that. It's Crash Team Racing, actually.
Oh, of course.
Yeah. So, Spyro makes it into my top 10. So the slightly longer shortlist. But yeah, Crash Team Racing. Not that there's necessarily an order, but it's actually at the top of my shortlist. Again, just the amount of times I've replayed it, it's like, and it's funny because I'm not a big racing game guy. But there's actually 2 racing games in my list.
Really?
Yeah, I don't think you'll get the other one, but there is a bit of a theme, and that is like neither of them are like true racing games. Like they are racing games, but they're not serious. That's the point. They don't really take themselves too seriously. So Crash Team Racing, you know, is part of the Crash Bandicoot franchise, and it's like I think the easiest and quickest way to explain it is I don't like to use this phrase, but it's basically a Mario Kart knockoff. But it does Mario Kart better than certainly at that time than any Mario Kart game did, in my opinion. Is like it takes the formula and it just like amps it up and does it really, really well. I think. So it's got all the Crash, you know, characters in there, and it's got great tracks. And of course, the thing that makes it like not a very serious racing game is like you're sliding around all over the place, and like you're boosting, and you're like using weapons, and you know that you pick up in crates and all that stuff. And it's just great fun, great soundtrack. I mean, there's probably there is a nostalgia thing for sure. I remember even just playing the demo. Someone had a demo of it back when that was a thing. Someone had a demo of it, and it was like 1 or maybe like 2 tracks, and that was like all you could play on this demo disc. I remember playing that around someone's house and thinking this is great. And then when I finally got a PlayStation, the deal was like there were like various kind of, you know, bundle deals, you know, like this PlayStation comes with like 3 games, or this one comes with these other games. Anyway, it was like the first game I ever played on my own PlayStation. Oh
wow.
Yeah. So it's kind of,
it's got to be special.
It is special. And yeah, you know, I've played that. It's got a great single player mode, but obviously it's great for when you have friends over. I've had birthday parties where like the main activity has been like, let's all play Crash Team Racing and like do the different cups, and take it in turns and whatever.
Okay, remind me, because as you know, I have another very good friend who's also crazy about Crash Team Racing. Yeah, and the two of you went head to head a few years ago. Remind me, who won? Was it you or not?
Oh, well, you know, it depends. You know, it depends how you, which way you slice it, I suppose.
Okay.
You know, if you were to talk about the Nitro Cup, then I won.
Okay.
We did 4 different cups, and he won 3 out of 4.
Okay. You won the Nitro Cup.
I won the Nitro Cup. It was chuffing close. But yeah, he had the edge, and you know, he was actually very generous and said, you know, there is a lot of, you know, random stuff in the game, and so, you know, play again and it could have gone a different way. But anyway, it was very close, and just so great.
I mean, the fact that you won 1 cup against him says a lot, because I couldn't beat him, like, not even close on any track.
Yeah. Yeah, it's one of those. There actually aren't many people I could race, and that would give me a genuine challenge, because I know those tracks so well. So it was a joy to play someone that was properly great at the game. So there you go, Crash Team Racing.
All right, let's do one more each, just very quickly, and then I think we better wrap it up.
Yeah.
So shall I just give you this next one?
You give it to me.
Oh, actually, shall I give you a hint?
Go on. Okay.
PlayStation 2 game. It's a franchise that I really like, but you haven't played very much of.
Oh, okay. Yes, I've got it. And I thought about this earlier in the day. Surely in your list must be Ratchet and Clank.
Yeah, this is specifically Ratchet and Clank 2, which I think that's my favorite one in the series.
Okay.
But just a brilliant, brilliant game. Like, it takes everything that Ratchet and Clank 1 did well and does it better. It adds in all these like progression elements. So, I mean, it's like what we were saying last time. You know, that's something I really enjoy in a game is progression. And in Ratchet and Clank 2, there is a ton of progression. Because you're like leveling up your health over time. You're leveling up your weapons. And then just the story and the characters are so fun, so quirky.
Yeah.
Yeah. Love it.
It's great. It's a great action-adventure game. I've not played much of 2. I played all of 1. You lent me Ratchet and Clank, the trilogy remaster
in HD. Yeah.
So I played like all of 1 in like quite quick succession. Like started 2 and then like sort of fizzled out and never returned. But I do want to return sometime because it was a great game, really great.
Yeah. Yeah, I've replayed those games so many times, and I still get the temptation to go back to them every now and again. Yeah,
and I think it shares, I think, as you say, like great characters and just like fun and just really engaging. And the worlds are great, and
the worlds are great.
A lot of the things about it, I mean, it's a lot of things I enjoyed about that. I enjoy, similar things that I enjoy about Spyro, for example. It's kind of
well, it's the same team, isn't it?
Yeah, you're right. Yes, yeah. So like really similar, like family of stuff in there that just makes a really great game.
Yeah. And your last one?
Oh gosh. Okay. I'm looking at my list. Which one should I shout out? Okay. Unreal Tournament 2004.
Of course. Just before you tell us about that, though, what was the other racing game that you said was in your shortlist?
Okay, yeah, I can't not reveal that. So it's a game called Flat Out 2.
Oh, okay.
I might have mentioned it to you once or twice. It's a game, actually. Our joint friend gave me a copy. Again, it's a slightly more serious racing game than Crash Team Racing, but it's like you buy cars and they're like you kind of have this race career. So I think that's a bit more traditional in terms of like a racing game. You kind of start with a cheap car and you earn money as you go along, and you buy a better car and maybe you upgrade your car and all that stuff. But what makes this game great is like there's a lot of crashing.
Right, yeah.
There's a lot of crashing involved. Not only does it just happen, but also you are encouraged to crash because you earn boost from crashing into people
or that's fun,
or destroying stuff. So it has a big element of like destructible environments, and so like you crash into like some signs or you crash into like a barrier, and that earns you like boost. And all the while the like racetrack is getting messier and messier, and so like when you come around for lap 2, like maybe you hit something that wasn't there last time and like it messes you up. And yeah, it's kind of silly, but it's as close to a serious racing game as I get, because like you can get, take the apex of the corner decently, and that it means you get ahead and that sort of thing. But all the while, like if you make some mistakes and stuff, just earn some boost and blast your way to the front again.
I never would have guessed that would be in your shortlist.
Yeah. Well, I may have mentioned it before in the podcast by the name that my kids give it, and that is the Smashy Crashy game. so
that could mean Crash Bandicoot or Flat Out.
Yeah, so it's one of my select in that little niche of games, which is games I enjoy, which are also child friendly. So the Smashy Crashy game gets a shout out. But very quickly, Unreal Tournament 2004. Oh my goodness, it's up there with most replayed games for me for sure. And it's funny, some people might be like, what? Because in some senses, it was a real game, obviously, and it was a great game and very well loved. But in one sense, it was kind of you could see it as a technical, technical showcase of the Unreal Engine of that time,
which is still very widely used today, obviously.
Indeed, obviously, we're onto the Unreal Engine 5 now, right? And a huge amount of games that are produced these days will be made in Unreal engines of whatever 4 or 5 or whatever,
and it still carries 20 years worth of craft.
yeah, for better or worse, we're still using it, and people just can't be bothered to go fix it. But anyway, so yeah, some people would kind of almost reduce the game to the just calling it a technical showcase of the engine. But it's a first-person shooter, but it is what a subgenre of I think what these days you might refer to as an arena shooter.
Okay.
Where particularly, you kind of have these big, biggish arenas where you might have lots of people, or at least lots of players, whether they're computer or not, all having at it. And that might be a death match, or you've got capture the flag. You've got a great mode called double domination, where you need to hold control of 2 different points at the same time, and so that really requires teamwork, because your team need to you can't be in 2 places at once, so you need to work together to do this thing. And then there's this mode called assault, which you have these objectives you got to go through, and it's kind of this more scripted thing rather than an arena. You've kind of got you've got to assault the factory or whatever it is, and then you do an attacking run, and then the other team you sort of switch and you defend whilst the other team do the same thing and try to do it quicker than you did. Anyway, so it's just I don't know. It's really satisfying. It's really good. I think there are other games which there's another game which I might give an honourable mention before the end of the episode, where you have this chance to you get to sort of order your team around a bit. So there's this element of
Star Wars
team...
Republic Commando.
Yeah, it is Republic Commando. Great knowledge. Okay. Yes. So you get to tell your team be offensive or defend this point or do this stuff, and it's kind of light touch, but you get an element of team management and team tactics, which is quite gratifying. And I just love the attitude of the game. It's got a lot of I don't know, larger than life personalities. The art style is kind of big and bombastic, big ideas. There's kind of almost it ranges from Egyptian themed people to Gothic themed people. It's nothing's out of bounds. It's just so cool. So yeah, that makes it definitely to my shortlist.
That's a good shout. I do really like the Unreal Tournament games. I think I played 2003 a bit more.
Yeah.
But I think in recent years when we've tried to play multiplayer, I've found it frustrating because I just don't have the map knowledge. And I think we played that assault game mode and I was just having a terrible time.
Yeah. Yeah, I think, I think that is actually one of the things about arena shooters, I think, because knowing where the pickups are and where the big health or the armor or the weapons, that becomes quite important, particularly when you're playing against other people that know the maps really well. And so when you're new, that just can be quite frustrating.
Literally, my enjoyment of the game hinges on whether I'm holding a flat cannon or a rocket launcher.
yeah. It's finally, I'm in a good place. Right, let's go. Yeah.
And the rest of the time, I'm just looking for a weapon.
Yeah. Well, there's some of the modes in that game. There's one I haven't mentioned yet called Onslaught, which is actually just was like a multiplayer only, or kind of, it wasn't part of the main campaign of the game, but it's like this kind of vehicle based control points thing, a bit Star Wars Battlefront actually, where you kind of have to have the points. You got to control all the points to like be able to win, and those had like weapons racks. So like if you died, you just like run over a weapons rack and you'd like get like 6 or 7 different weapons, and just like to kind of almost eliminate that kind of hunting down the weapons thing, which was kind of a cool idea.
Yeah. I think we better wrap it up, but I'll name drop a few.
Okay.
Without going into detail.
Do it.
This has been a very self-indulgent episode, I feel. Like
100%.
I can't imagine anyone being particularly interested in our top 10 games, but nonetheless, ones I haven't mentioned: Fez, Anno 1602, The Witness, Team Fortress 2, and Nidhogg.
Nidhogg, great shout!
What a brilliant game!
Yeah. Okay. Well, for my list then, for the short list, Star Wars Battlefront has a place as well, and then the slightly longer list, I've just put Doom hyphen all of them. There's a lot, and I think we've said enough. But also in that slightly longer list, Donkey Kong and the Spyro games. Number 2 in particular. I have an even longer list, and I'll just do a couple of shout outs. We've mentioned Diablo 2. You've just mentioned Anno. Star Wars Commando was in my list.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, I've replayed that a bunch of times. I put Oblivion.
Great game.
Nidhogg also in my list. Crash Bash.
Yeah. Replayed that recently with a mate.
Did you?
Yeah.
It's just a great game. Great single player and multiplayer elements, which are just in just a fun setting of the Crash universe. But I've bundled up the Disney games because there's a bunch. But Hercules, Tarzan, Lion King, Aladdin, all great games.
Okay.
This is just super indulgent now. I'm just saying all the things I love, but Mario, particularly Super Mario World, obviously.
Obviously.
I put Warcraft 3 as well, actually.
Really?
Not something I've come back to lots, but like, just a great strategy game.
That was a good game.
There are more, but I just don't want to burn everyone's time.
I mean, this is really just the tip of the iceberg. I've got a list of favorite games by genre.
Yeah.
But that's a conversation for probably not even another time.
No, just between us. And no one else needs to listen. Or maybe we'll do a special. Yeah, if you made it this far.
Thank you for listening, and we'll I was going to say see you in the next one, because that's my usual YouTube outro, but we won't see you at all.
You will hear our voices when you next turn us on.
We're just going to end on that.